Hello again, citizens of YouTube. It is Jonathan, also known as the PC Genie. Today, as you have noticed probably, I'll be talking about a recently obtained billhook. Now, we get billhooks that are sort of single-hand things, and I've got a couple of those already for sort of single-handed work and whatnot. But it's not really much weapon, it's literally about the size of a large knife or a kukri or something like that. Whereas this, of course, is more of a polearm type of length, which is more like what you'd see historically. So, I basically got this recently from, funny enough, just a street market, and it was only £19. Now, of course, the historical versions of the billhooks would be more sort of militaristically designed with double edges, hooks, and things like that. I'll go into that later. But yeah, this agricultural version is still very useful. Got a nice edge. It's like the guy actually advertised, he's correct. It takes an edge nicely and it holds an edge well. Very nice sort of blade. And apart from that, one thing that's always worth mentioning whenever covering the topics of pole arms like billhooks, spears, whatever, is that they're easy to use. I know people love swords, and quite rightly so, they're brilliant things. But I mean, if you wanted to, say, arm some people against generic bad guys, go for some spears, seriously, or go for these sorts of things, pole arms, because they're easy to use. For example, I mean, if you have something like a dagger, or you had something like a sword, then you've actually got to be willing to actually close in, potentially within someone's reach. And to a lot of people, first time, if they're sparring or even fighting for their lives, it's pretty scary actually, and you're always constantly worried about that weapon, and either if you're someone who's more offensive to start with, you'll charge in and put yourself in danger, or even if you're more defensive, you can end up getting into this pattern of just defending and not presenting a threat at all. Whereas with these, you can safely and comfortably, well, as much as you can be, start sort of doing little jabs and little strikes and things here and there, either thrusts, or even sort of little cuts and things here and there. The hands, head, torso, wherever you can get. And it's much easier to do if you've got a pole arm, because of course you can keep your opponents at reach. Thank you very much, I like that advantage. But yes, this sort of weapon, especially when you've got the sort of hooks and double edges and things like that, which unfortunately I haven't got on this variant, it's very similar to other types of pole arms. So you actually see various crooks and various sort of pole weapons, such as the Vulg, the pike, which is just a giant spear, and even things like siege forks, which are these things that have sort of hooks and are there many feet tall for sort of pulling people off of castle walls and things like that. And amongst them, you would see very longer, poled versions of something like this, a billhook as well, very common in the medieval period. And you'll see some collections if you Google it and look at, medieval billhooks. You'll see plenty of them. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is, well, it's only a few feet tall. I mean, you can't even see it on a video, it's that short, but your typical sort of actual medieval version would be much taller than the actual user in most cases to make it a proper polearm, again about the reach advantage. But, yeah, I mean, when you actually have got perhaps a shorter variant or even on longer ones, you can use it a bit like sort of a staff or a poleaxe, really. It's like if I'm on one-on-one, I could, for example, start doing cuts and things from the front, but then perhaps go around and do something like a quarterstaff type strike with the butt, and even use that to follow up with maybe a low cut or high cut or any kind of thing like that. And even where with swords you have to sort of start holding at the end, do the cuts, and then if you wanted to get really close to your opponent, or your opponent gets close to you, you'd have to half sword, grab it and not slip along, otherwise the blade will cut your fingers, so you have to just grab it there and then. With something like this, I'm going to just go keeping you out, keeping you out, keeping you out, close in, no fingers sliced. So yeah, apart from that, yeah, I mean, with things like the actual hook extensions, again with things like poleaxes more specifically, with a lot of the variants of these sorts of billhooks, you can actually go around something like the back of the neck, the weapon, the hands, and even down towards the legs, and start hooking to then do things like pull a person up or pull them more towards you, or even actually deflect a strike coming up, towards you and deflect it away. It makes it easier than just trying to carry it along with your blade. You can actually catch it and pull it away properly. But yes, of course, one of the main disadvantages between something like this and an actual sword is, suffice it to say, that around here you've got your lovely chopping blade, but can't really do much with the actual stick end unless you're using it to follow up with something like, as I mentioned earlier, whack with the butt end. I know you guys will probably getting a bit bored of me just yapping at you already, so I have actually done some test cutting with this, so I shall present that to you now. Look at that damage. Granted, not the cleanest cut in the world, or rather not the cleanest cuts in the world, but still pretty damaging. So yes, that's the end result of that. And in terms of the carton, well, not going to be able to drink out of this anymore because most of the way through, almost to the edge. I mean, we're talking right from top here, up top about here, carving all the way through here. So it's actually completely gone through one of the layers and gone most of the way through the second layer. And there was a second cut which was here, which again carved through it quite a bit. So yes, quite a bit of damage from a billhook.